Have you ever noticed you are pushing yourself, staying at work late to get a project completed, double checking your work because you think it's not good enough? Perhaps you find that you don't offer yourself a chance to truly rest. This is your nervous system driving you. The good news is that we can rewire our nervous system to allow more flexibility, more self-care, and be less driven. This push by the nervous system is depleting and not in service of your well-being. Continuing this pattern can lead to further exhaustion, burnout, and despair. The truth is, we can have a lot more options to respond to life rather than being enslaved by these nervous system habits that may be outdated. I'm Dr. Jeffrey Rutstein. I've been a practicing clinical psychologist for over 4 decades. Over that time, my experience has been that we are inherently wired for well-being. We all hold the keys to greater happiness, ease, and connection in our lives. However, we are not taught how to access these capacities. Welcome to the Wired for Wellbeing podcast, where we explore how understanding your nervous system can transform the way you live, love, and relate. Each week, we use real questions from listeners like you as doorways to explore how we each can work with our nervous system. Because while our stories differ, all our nervous systems speak a shared language. When you work with your nervous system instead of against it, life opens up with more compassion, freedom, and ease. If you'd like to leave a question, the number to call is in our show notes. I'm joined by my good friend and producer, Steve Lessard. Hey, Steve, how are you?
Hi, Jeffrey. I'm well. How are you today?
I'm really good, thank you. So let's dive in. Steve, what do you have for us this week?
Our question this week is from a woman who would like to remain anonymous. She wrote her question in, so you get to hear me read it.
Sounds good.
I struggle to feel safe enough to rest or stop driving myself so hard in my work and life. I make good money and I am frugal with it, yet I never feel like I have enough. If I complete a project at work ahead of time, I worry I have missed something and keep reviewing it over and over. I want to change this pattern, but it seems my body stops me even when I know that what I'm doing and worrying about is often just a habit. How can I actually change this pattern? What do I need to do differently? After so many years, I'm losing hope that I can actually change this way of being. Jeffrey, help us understand what's going on here.
Well, first, I just want to contact that it sounds like this writer has been struggling with this for a while, and that she, like so many of us, reaches a point where we begin to doubt. We've expended effort and time to try to change the way that we do things or how we feel about things or how we react to things. And if it doesn't work, we end up feeling hopeless, discouraged. So I just want to contact that kind of pain that it's very prevalent. And by the way, just we're naming it, that little piece of despair is also emanating from the lower energy level, that more shutdown and collapse region of our nervous system. But 2 things come to mind about this questioner. One thing is that she has really good awareness, by the way. She's able to watch a lot of these processes. So I want to also commend her on that. But one thing she's aware of is that she keeps looping, thinking about stuff. Like, for example, the finishing up work, feeling it's early, and then continuing to check to make sure that she hasn't done something wrong, hasn't overlooked something, hasn't left something crucial out. And so part of what's in that is the kind of doubt and looping that we experience when we have a certain amount of flight energy in us. That's the frightened, anxious energy. We tend to become more doubtful of what we've done. We don't trust ourselves or our decisions as much. And we also get driven by the state into a tendency to obsess or loop or ruminate about what's troubling us. And the thing about looping or rumination is that it keeps feeding the state. The more that I loop, the more I put fuel on the fire of my flight, and I get more fearful. It's sort of like is convincing me more and more that, yeah, I'm really in trouble, really something wrong, and I get more activated, which then impacts our ability to actually critically look at something, to objectively look at something. Because again, if I'm activated, I'm going to see the world through an activated lens. If I'm in flight, I'm going to see the world as frightening, or that I might do something that could be frightening or make me feel less secure. So there's clearly some sympathetic activation that's going on that's interfering, making it hard for her to do what her mind consciously wants to be able to do. She doesn't want to fret about these things as much. And she also knows that some of these are just being maintained because they're habits of her nervous system. And even with that knowledge, she's finding that she still keeps doing the pattern. There's also something else that I believe is in this, and it's a little bit more hidden. But for so many of us who have an anxiety like this, and I'm sure many folks in our audience can identify with a piece of this doubting or looping about stuff or feeling they've missed something important, that there's also a quality of shame, which is coming from that shutdown and collapse range of our nervous system, because there is a desire or a felt need to be perfect, right? To, if she got her project done early, she must have missed something, and that would be shameworthy. She can't afford to be shameworthy, so she needs to make sure and check and recheck and check again to make sure there's nothing that she overlooked that she could be faulted for.
So can you help me understand the shame side of it? And maybe I'm getting shame and guilt mixed up. Is shame I am bad, guilt I did something bad?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Right?
So the I am bad side of it, that this individual, and I can relate to this, of feeling like I got to keep working or I got to put in 60 hours to be quote unquote good. What is that shame response driving me away from or towards? Like what am I trying to protect against in that,
Okay,
or this
great
person for
question.
that matter?
Great question. And I would first start by saying, I would reword that to say, it's not about her feeling bad. It's about her fear that she's not good enough. And that enoughness or not enoughness happens also with her money. I think she says that she earned a good living. She's careful, frugal with her money. And yet her nervous system doesn't ever feel safe. It feels like she doesn't have enough, like she needs more, and she needs more in her life. And I think her first line was that she drives herself in work and life, right? So it's not just everything she does has this driven quality to it. So again, that's the front piece is getting us is the anxiety. The infiltration of the not enoughness comes in with doubting that whatever she's done is sufficient, whether it's saving money, doing a project, or whatever else she's doing in her life, maybe her exercise routine or her diet or her social life. But I can imagine that this individual feels like she always needs to do more, be more, accomplish more, just to be okay, right? It's not like she needs to be miles and miles ahead of the pack. She just has to be safe from being rejected. So your question also was an invitation for us to look a little bit deeper at this in terms of, well, how is shame working in this? So shame has an orientation that says, if I make me the problem and I work on that, I will protect myself from rejection, abandonment, being shunned. And evolutionary psychologists do believe that shame's purpose was to stop us from violating our family or clan's taboos, like murder or incest. And so by having shame over those things, hopefully it would get us to not pursue them or do them. And again, that's for maintaining attachment, connection. So shame is actually trying to squeeze us a bit. So I don't do something that pushes you away, that makes you think, Steve, that, oh, Jeffrey is bad or he's disgusting, or I thought he was a good person, but now I learned that he's really not. I need to protect myself from that. So my shame will get a little bit out in front, and I'll be working through anxiety to try to clear up the field, to try to present myself as fine or good enough or okay, to present my work to you in a way that doesn't show any flaws or doubts. So the shame is actually, in this case, kind of pushing the anxiety, right? It's the base of it. So, by the way, before I go on, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. I've got some follow-up questions that we'll get to, but I want you to keep going.
Okay, so yeah, so with this, right, she's caught mostly, and what she's most conscious of is the anxiety symptoms. If we just work on regulating the anxiety, which would be a first step, maybe doing the long out breath, hand to heart or hand to face and heart, right? A few practices like that, a few moments of the long out breath will help us dial down some of the anxiety. But if we don't also work at the shame level, the anxiety will return. It will keep blossoming up because we're not taking care of what's actually driving the anxiety, which is this fear that anyone who has shame has, that there is something not enough, damaged, wrong, insufficient with us, and that we have to hide that. Otherwise, I won't have connection. I won't have love. I won't have people who want to be attached to me. So the way to work with shame, and this is probably an episode in and of itself, is to actually begin to cultivate a capacity for self-compassion. Self-compassion actually builds an antidote neural network in contrast to the shame network, that the way out of shame is through compassion, not through fighting shame or denying it or getting angry with ourselves for feeling ashamed or getting despairing because we're feeling shame, but instead moving into an attitude or feeling of kindness or tenderness towards the shame itself.
Let me try to wrap my hands around all the things bouncing around in my head right now. Um, there's a there seems like there's a cultural side of this, particularly like related to work.
Yes.
I think it's very easy for us to either have direct experience with work cultures or to intuit a work culture that maybe benefit or prioritizes grind culture. I worked 60 hours this week. And maybe what I'm hearing is the self-compassionate thing to say is that's not good for you. It's not good for the company, really. And you deserve better. And you need, I'm being harsh with my language here, but you need to have the self-compassion to build that up, to realize I rest is something that I'm worthy of. And yeah, did I stray too far from the idea here with that vision of looking at this work culture and this grind
No,
culture, the external pressure and then the internal pressures we put on ourselves?
it's an important component of this. I'm assuming this client is probably from a developed nation. And because of that, there is, especially in Western culture, a huge emphasis on our identity as being productive, constructive, participating, producing. Like our worth is based on how much we do. And so that can play right into the hands of shame, because shame only looks at what we do and only looks at what we do through a very negative, critical, judgmental lens. It never looks at or is able to look at what we do right. Shame can't recognize that. And it doesn't even reflect on your being as a human being, like the essence or quality of you as a human: compassion, care, heart, engagement, effort that we do for ourselves or for people we care about. Shame doesn't and is unable to look or include any of that in it. And then on top of that, if I'm in a culture where I have more righteousness or nobility, if I work those 60 hours, oh, hell, I'll work 75 and I'll be more than you if you're only working 60, right? And how many times, especially in my younger career, my colleagues and friends and myself even would talk about how many hours we worked, as if that was a measure of being hardworking, was a measure of being a good person. And I think that infiltrates almost everybody's self-concept. And then, right, because again, shame gets us to look outside of ourselves. Shame is the process of me imagining what other people are thinking and imagining about me. So then, if I'm in a society that seems to value productivity and heroic work hours, then I'm going to try to assess my worth because of shame through joining other people's idea of what a good person is, right? It's kind of an abandonment of my own feelings, perhaps, about I need rest or I don't want to work this hard. And I push through those nervous system signals because I want to be seen as a good citizen, a good person, a person who's a hard worker. And that just adds a whole nother layer to what keeps us from wanting to get in touch with our nervous system. Matter of fact, most of the success in capitalistic societies is from overworking, right? Is from this kind of incredible expenditure of effort, or even in some ways an over expenditure of effort to be able to keep producing more than we did last year, to make more, to do more, to be more. So this kind of focuses on our not enoughness and gets us in the grind with what can feel like everybody else who is competing to be a really good worker in person.
So how do we start threading this needle between what feels like our internal story and who we are and the shame that may come up with that or the conditioning that may have led to who we are with the work environments we're in or the cultural environments we're in and the messaging we're receiving from that standpoint. uh, there are two other themes I wanted to try to put into this as well, alongside of like what this caller said around like she feels it in her body. Her body's trying to tell her something, which I'm wondering if she's talking about her nervous system trying to tell her something, but her mind it knows the difference.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
how do we? What's the path through?
Okay. So if we have shame, we will tend to look outside of ourselves, to look for what other people are doing, or to get some signal that what we're doing is safe, is enough. That's why if she finishes earlier than her colleagues on a project and they're still working on it, she assumes, instead of that she's brighter and she could fly through this work, she assumes the only reason she's done quicker is she missed something. I remember taking my psychology exam, which is like a 4-hour licensing exam, and I finished at like 2 hours. And I got up and I left, and no one came out after me. And then I thought, oh God, like, did I forget a whole page? And I started doubting myself, but you can't go back in the room once you left. So, and I passed. But the idea is I didn't know that. And this whole thing of why I must have missed something to get through this fast, that must be careless of me. So I know lots of people have a similar experience when they finish something quick, for example. So part of reversing this trend is to bring our vision back into us, meaning de-emphasize the reliance on external support or validation, and to shift a bit more towards tuning into your body, your nervous system, what it's telling you and what it needs. For example, I believe that this individual doesn't feel safe being herself, that she feels safer, like a better person, daughter, human being, if she works really, really hard and is always vigilant and is always trying to improve and be better. And That's again driven by trying to meet some idealized and externalized standard instead of actually feeling what does my body feel? Like you've mentioned before, like if we work with compassion, we'll finally realize that we don't have to be that hard on us. One of the ways to get there is if you're in your body, you will begin to really feel the toll it takes to push through all the time or to deny your needs, tired, food, rest, or to deny standing up and stretching your body because I still got this deadline and I got to get this done. In our culture, and both for work and for how we deal with our inside experience, most of us in this world push through and ignore our nervous system. We live our lives in spite of the signals that our nervous system sends us. And that's one way of doing it, but it's not a terribly helpful way of doing it. A much better, more healthy, and easier way is to actually work with the nervous system. So you can find out, for example, like she said, yeah, my body stops me from doing this. Well, what's in the body that's stopping you? And again, my sense from doing this for so many years is that there is something afraid about letting go of continually striving, letting go of continually efforting, that some part of her sense of goodness or lovability or worthwhileness is, she identifies that as part of her incessant drivenness, right? And again, being a driven student or worker gets us a lot of acclaim. It doesn't help us live longer and it doesn't help our organs be healthy, but we do get a lot done and we can get the gratitude or respect of other people, but at a cost.
So, getting back into the heart of what this person's asking, and probably a lot of us who have a similar experience, um, and you're starting to tease this, but maybe I'm trying to set the table here. How can we actually change this pattern, to use this person's direct words, and what do they need to do differently?
So, what I would suggest is that she first do some soothing or calming practices, because these will help the nervous system dial down the anxiety. When we're anxious, our mind is working faster, gets noisier. When it gets noisier, it's harder for us to distinguish signal from noise. If we quiet down, soothe our nervous systems a little bit, the speed of thinking slows, the amount of chaos diminishes, and we start re-entering an experience of actually being in our body instead of being in our head and out into thoughts, worries, and to the next task. I'm not even at this task. I'm thinking about the two I have to get done beyond this, right? So breaking that pattern of rushing through moments, of being driven to push all the time, is the movement of coming back in and down with our awareness, right? So people at home can do this right now, which is just taking a moment to direct your awareness to feeling your sits bones make contact with the surface that you're sitting or reclining on. So you can still hear my voice, but allow your awareness to see if you can feel into, as moving your awareness as close as you can to where your sit bones make contact. And then allowing yourself on each out breath to sink a little bit more deeply into the surface that's supporting you, sort of relaxing into it. Now, this is something you can do to use your awareness to help shift your activation level. If you want to potentiate even more, you can add the long out breath, where you invite your out breath to become about twice as long as your in breath. Again, doing that for 5, 10, 20 breaths is enough to really help lower arousal. And if you want to further potentiate it, you can have your awareness in your sit bones, you can be doing the long out breath, and you can also do the heart face connection. Now, the heart-face connection also helps brings us presence, but it also invites a little bit of tenderness in just this position, this way of connecting with the body. Plus, safe contact from you or from a safe person will feel equally settling. It will be signaling to your body that you're safe in the moment, not in danger. So, all three of these things help you settle a bit more, become more present, and also become more connected with your immediate experience of being in this body. So, that's the first thing I'd recommend. And that will, she practices this, lower the noise. And from there, she can begin to explore a little bit of the voice of shame, right? Which is the thing that gets her to believe that she's not enough unless she works 90 hours, or unless she saves $1 million, or unless she, checks her work 10,000 times, that there's this drive. And what we want to do is help her feel into what's really fueling that drive, because it's also a fear, but it's connected with some level of inadequacy, not being enough, that there's something wrong with her. And if she can begin to approach that belief, that sense, that feeling with kindness, and again, the hand on the heart and the face is a good posture to engage in while you're sort of feeling into what might be driving your feelings of shame or not enoughness right now. The idea is not to get rid of the anxiety or get rid of the shame. It's helping you not be stuck in them or controlled in them indefinitely. We're not ever going to wipe out our capacity for shame or anxiety. We need that. But so many of us, this person as an example, has been in a state of anxious shame for so many years, she kind of just feels like this is her. That's why she's saying, I don't even know if I can change, right? My body keeps me locked here. Well, and I, like you, I believe that her using the phrase body really is referring to how our nervous system prevents us. Like, I remember as an example, I wanted to swim in the ocean more than anything because all my friends did. I shouldn't say more than anything. I wanted to do it so I would be okay. And I would psych myself on the 2-hour drive to the ocean, and I'd be thinking about getting in. I'd be imagining it, rehearsing it. I'd be getting a little anxious about it. Yeah, I'm going to do it. Yeah, I'm going to do it. My friends were going to encourage me. They were there. They were great. And like each time I couldn't, I mean, I could go in and wade, but I wouldn't go in and submerge myself and go through waves. And it was my body. Like my head was saying, let's try this. My body was going, no, you are not. And I didn't have any of these tools back then. And I felt stuck, stymied, like I'll never get over this. And then, just as an end to this story, I went to the ocean as an adult with my brother when he had kids and I had kids. And I went in the ocean with him and never been afraid since then. And that was an example for me of when my brother could co-regulate me, I felt safe enough to do this. So that's also, by the way, why when some people work through some of these conflicts, it is important for some people to work with a trained professional because they can offer some co-regulation and some balance while you may be trying to swim your way through choppy waters.
In so many questions we receive, as well as the other programs that I support you in, and we get questions, it really naturally seems like people are looking for that silver bullet or that magic wand or the like, just tell me the one thing to do. Just what do I do? How do I change this? And what's became clear to me today from your explanation of this is it seems like you can't solve the problem from within the problem. So you've got to get to a place where you can start to calm that down. So that's the thing to do. And then from within that, whether it's this person's case or any other number of scenarios like your swimming scenario or any other things that our listeners may be feeling, then you can start to look at the thing that you want to start to poke at or understand. Or maybe in your case of the ocean, you just go in and you realize, oh, I'm in the ocean.
Right, right. That my body, because I felt safer with my brother, and a little bit of, I didn't want to have the embarrassment or my pride bruised by being the younger brother who was scared to go in the water still. So there was a double motivation there. I felt safer, and I also felt some healthy motivation to do this. By the way, I had a little bit of fight or flight going, which helped me push through some of the fear to go in there, but I was with it. I wasn't denying it. I was working with it. So here's the simplest way of looking at this is that our nervous system drives so much of what we think and feel and believe about ourselves and the world. And unless we see that, we will continually be controlled and driven by something that's operating outside of our awareness. And unless we learn the language, we don't get to interact with it, right? Like a lot of people will try to work through these issues from the top down, meaning I'll talk myself out of it. There's no reason to be afraid here. There's no reason to be, and that's okay. That can be helpful, but that doesn't alter the body. That may clarify things in your mind. Yes, I really want this, but that doesn't do anything about your nervous system feeling like, okay, I could do that. So we need to actually do and engage in what's called bottom up, which means that we need to do some somatic or body practices, directing our awareness to sensation that actually invites and leads our nervous system into a state of safer regulation, because that's what helps us get free. Once I have a little bit of regulation, even just 2 toes in, like we say, I then have a enlarged capacity to both see and understand what's going on, but I have a widened capacity to respond differently. If I'm in shame or panic, I have a very small, narrow window of response. I can only do this or that. But if I'm more uh, regulated, I might be able to see 3 or 4 things I can do, and something I could do today, and yet something I could then do differently tomorrow or next week. I could see other options and potentials instead of when I'm in a defensive state, the world gets narrowed and my imagination gets very narrow too as to what I could do to help myself. Like the more hijacked we get, our ability to see into things, our prefrontal cortex goes a bit offline. So understanding stuff from a rational, objective point of view begins to go out the window because the body's driving the bus. The nervous system is driving the bus, not your conscious thinking mind. How does that land in you, Steve? Does that make a kind of sense?
It doesn't. It brings up a question that is, I think, inherent also in what we're talking about today, this idea of enoughness and feeling enough. And again, this comes up in so many places in so many ways. And as you were sharing, I was trying to figure out like, well, how would I use this to overcome that story? How would I understand, regulate my nervous system. I find tools to kind of calm myself. How do we develop that new story of I actually am enough. I do deserve this, or that is enough, or I am good enough. Talk to me about how we build that because I
So,
desperately want
right.
to build that.
So that really, really comes from a consistent practice of self-compassion. It's not about me telling myself enough that I'm enough so that I finally believe it. The secret sauce is shifting our state. If I move towards self-compassion, compassion is really only accessible when we have a few toes or more in in regulation. If we're mostly in fight, flight, freeze, or shutdown, we're not going to access self-compassion. We'll only access judgment and reactivity. So part of this is learning the processes of um, generating a sense of kindness or tenderness or friendliness, an inner sense of care. I often use the example that you'd like to speak to your shame as you would to any young child who you love and they're in pain, you would be soothing, you would be present, you would be softening their blame. And so some of the statements we can make would be, I try so hard to be good so that I can be loved. And I forget that I'm actually not going to be loved for how good I am. I'm probably going to be loved for the ways I can show up as me, or with care, or with being real, right? Not fake, not too sweet, not too nice, but real, authentic. And this comes from this developing, this growing a capacity to meet ourselves with a warm kindness, with that kindness that you would bestow upon a child. And often, our shame, if you listen carefully to your voice of shame inside, you will discover, if you listen carefully, that there's qualities about it that make you know, if you're alert, that it's coming from a young sense of self. It's not coming from an adult sense. It's coming from a young sense of self where there is an absolute dichotomy, good and bad, right and wrong. Shame doesn't see shades of gray. It either sees you at one, well, actually it only sees you at one extreme, the bad extreme, right? So noticing and becoming familiar with the way that shame shows up in our feelings, the collapse of the body, the criticism and narration of darkness, failure, judgment, uh, beginning to notice that and to shifting back into a sense of kindness. One of the things is also being able to talk from that kindness. Like, if we can be a little bit in regulation, even how we speak to ourselves will change. So if I'm anxious, I'm going to go, okay, you're all right, just relax, you're right. That's not going to work. Right? I wouldn't believe me, right? But if I can drop in, if I can inhabit my body a little bit and inhabit this breath and help me regulate slowly, taking some time, then as my activation drops, I can speak more from my heart. And then I can offer, it's okay to rest. But not as like telling me what to do. It's about reassuring my nervous system. It's okay to rest. It's okay to take care of yourself and to take care of your obligations. It doesn't have to be one or the other. That you are human, not a machine. And that so much of the time we feel we have to be like a perfect machine. But these kinds of sentiments need to come from when you're a bit more connected, a bit more regulated. And when we're regulated, we have access to qualities like care, compassion, connection, and a wider view, a wider vision of things. And that's what allows us to, from a different state, a much more regulated state, approach the dysregulation in a way that helps quiet it and settle it instead of fueling up even more.
Such so much to work with there, and such a great explanation of how to get to what this questioner is asking of how do they get out of this? How do they stop this? How do they shift? I'm wondering if there are any parting words you'd like to give to this questioner.
Well, number one, I would advise that if she decides to explore this way of working with her nervous system, that she also be wary of not to transfer this sense of, I have to drive myself now with my nervous system. I have to master my nervous system, learn how to talk to it, get it to settle down all in the next 2 weeks. And if I don't do that, I'm a failure. Be careful that whatever you do try initially will still be tainted by your nervous system's tendencies and habits. And so it's really important, again, to come into regulation and to sort of allow yourself a learning curve. This is going to take a while. For many people, offering self compassion is something they've never done in their lives, or they minimize, or they believe it's selfish, unworthy, a waste of time, especially if they believe so much in the worth of endless work and production that they're going to have a hard time finding out, well, what does this produce? How does this help me work faster or harder? Well, I guess the only way to do it is to work fast and hard at this so I can get better at doing all my work and being more relaxed. So just watch about not getting into a catch-22 where you drive yourself even in the efforts to befriend your nervous system. Befriending your nervous system requires us to have a slightly different rhythm. Can't be too fast and too activated. Can't be too shut down, collapsed, because there we won't have the energy for it. And if we're too sympathetically activated in fight or flight, we'll be too impatient, too impulsive, too reactive. The way that we can retrain our nervous system, the way that we can really help it grow, is by learning how to both regulate, that's the one step, and also how to bring in this and grow this sense of self-care, which is ultimately what really heals us from being driven by these shadows of our past, by these beliefs that maybe we got passed down from our parents, culture, society, our religion, and the shame and blame that we have in our own system. So be gentle, right? Compassion, self compassion is central to this. And I would invite you to even approach the learning of this in a compassionate and gentle way. If we learn things best when we're regulated. If you're pushing yourself to learn anything, you will do less well at it. You will absorb it less. You will integrate it less than if you're a little bit more settled when you're learning it. And that's the same thing with the nervous system, which is why, like in the program, the 9-month program we lead, we try to give a lot of space for participants to really be able to find their own rhythm and to be able to work with that.
Be gentle. What awesome advice. We've gotten a lot of great questions, and we've also gotten some feedback that it's a little scary to send my question in. And Jeffrey, maybe you can share a little bit about the types of questions and how to frame your question, and that desire doesn't have to be perfect, and then let us know where we can send our questions.
Sure. So we really would love to hear from you. And whether you can call in or send an email, if you have a question, that's wonderful. If you don't have a question, but you notice a struggle point, a pattern that keeps repeating itself in spite of what you've tried to do so far to shift it, or that there's a person in your life or people in your life that you continue to react to in ways that you don't like reacting, right? These are all things that we can share with you our input and our observations about how the nervous system drives so much of this. But in essence, our autonomic nervous system is what really drives the creation of fear, anxiety, despair, depression, dissociation, post traumatic stress. And so, learning how to work with it, we diminish the sources of so much suffering and struggle. So, if you have a question about how to overcome something, how to work with something, whether it's inside of you or relationally with someone else, whether it's about addiction or food or compulsions or thoughts, all of this for everyone is really driven by the nervous system. And remember that any question you submit will help other people, because there's no question that we receive that hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of people also resonate with, because our nervous systems are all very similar. Even though we have shifts in content, the struggles that each of us have are universal.
Jeffrey, maybe you can share the phone number and the email if people do want to send something in.
Sure, sure. If you'd like to send a question in, please call 866 357 5156 and leave us your question. And if for some reason you can't reach the 866 exchange from a foreign telephone number, then feel free to send an email either with an audio recording or just typed to hello@drjeffreyrutstein.com. And again, I'm excited that my flagship program with Sounds True, the Healing Trauma Program, is currently open for registration. And this is a 9-month intensive experience with really learning how to speak with your nervous system and really partner with it in a way that eases your life and opens up new possibilities. Steve, thank you always for your participation and your help with this. It's a fun time for me.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I learn 5 at least new things each time we do this. And on behalf of the community, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you. And remember, this podcast is for informational purposes only and isn't a substitute for professional mental or physical health care. If you're struggling, please do reach out to a qualified healthcare practitioner. Thank you all for joining us today. And until next time, bye for now.